This episode is brought to you by TaxAct. Don't do your taxes alone. Join TaxAct's National Admin Night. Admin nights are social gatherings for getting through your to-do list. So get ready for a night of fun, finding deductions, and filing taxes with TaxAct, where you can file your federal and state return for just $49 through April 8. Let's get together and get them over with. Visit taxact.com/admin-night for details.
Refreshing wild cherry cola meets smooth cream. The treat you deserve. Pepsi Wild Cherry and Cream. Treat yourself.
Don't let tax refund worries hold you back. File now with TurboTax on Intuit Credit Karma. They'll find every credit and deduction to help you get every refund dollar you deserve, or your money back. Start filing today in the Credit Karma app.
What is this, tap?
Yes, it is.
No filter?
No filter, tap water.
Huh, interesting. Surprised you don't have a filter.
You have no filter.
That's
quite obvious.
That's true. That's a good
Just
thing.
say whatever comes into your mind.
Yeah.
You don't really modulate your inner feelings at all, I'll tell you.
It's a good thing for me, but it's a bad thing for water.
Hi there, this is Martin Popoff, scribbler on all things heavy metal. You're listening to Jay Scott and the Hook Rock.
What's going on, everybody? How you doing? It is Jay Scott. Welcome back to another episode of The Hook Rocks, the ultimate rock community podcast, part of the Pantheon Podcast Network. Check out some great episodes from other great podcasters on the platform. We've been with Pantheon since December. We've enjoyed being a part of the family, of the Pantheon family. You can hear Martin Popoff. You can hear the boys from Shout It Out Loudcast. I think Carmine Apiece and Vinny Appice now have a podcast on the platform, so check that out. So a lot of great stuff over there. So give them a listen. Go check out Pantheon Podcasts. You can see them on Twitter at Pantheon Pods. You can follow us on Twitter at The Hook Rocks, Facebook The Hook Rocks. Website is coming soon. That's like the eternal message. I keep saying that. I think probably for like a year and a half now. It's kind of funny, actually, when you think about it. Hit subscribe wherever you're listening on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Pandora, wherever. And write us a review. If you like what you hear and you like the conversations, we always appreciate the feedback. And I hope you are staying safe, staying healthy. I hope you're enjoying spring. Good weather is upon us. Hopefully live music is coming soon on a more regular basis. I know bands are starting to play out. My fingers are crossed that it continues and it continues to grow, and hopefully we have some normalcy. Some numbers are spiking in certain areas, so that is a concern. Hopefully people, do what they need to do to help overcome this so we can get back to normalcy. But we're always here for an escape for you, as I always say. Music commentary, music interviews, great guests on the show, and we have a great guest for sure, a return guest, a repeat offender to the Hook Rocks podcast. Had the pleasure of interviewing this individual, this gentleman here in December of 2019, a few months before the shit hit the fan, and that is Neil Hunter from Takeaway Thieves, all the way from the UK. What's going on, Neil? How are you?
I'm very well, Jay. How are you?
I'm doing good, man. It's good to hear your voice.
Nice to hear from you. I'm glad you're keeping well and your family are keeping well.
Yeah, we're doing what we can, right? With the circumstances and what's going on. Obviously things have changed since we last talked, but I know a lot of bad has happened, a lot of negative stuff has happened, but I think a lot of positives are coming out of it, especially those that affect rock music and music in general. And that's what we focus on here. And, we also, we don't really take part in the other conversations that affect people. We're here to be an escape for people and talk music. And, for months, we talked about the challenges facing rock music and why rock music has lost its relevancy and lost its way. And even from our last conversation, we did talk about the resurgence that was going to happen in 2021. Or actually, we thought it was going to be 2020. We thought 2020 was going to be a big year for rock music. Obviously, that got put on pause. But the way the landscape has changed now, and as I've been saying since the fall of last year, the celebration of rock music is back. And people are getting excited about going to rock shows, hearing rock music. How are you feeling? How are you seeing things in the UK?
I totally agree with you. I think people are just itching to get out and into these venues to not only see live music, but just to be sociably interactive with people again. And I feel bands are it's like everyone's in the starter blocks, just waiting to go, okay, let's go. And, the last year, everything has been on hold, and it's just reinvigorated, I think, the whole scene. We just coming out actually in a couple of months from the new wave of classic rock is a compilation of, like, if you will, 42 of the best UK new wave of classic rock bands, and that's a compilation CD that the people behind new wave of classic rock are trying to get in the UK charts. So it's 42 of the top, bands in the UK have been picked. So this is the volume 1, which is available for anyone to order now. So there's all these emerging bands who are like going to be on this album, to springboard really and start this renaissance, if you will, of live music and rock and roll.
Yeah, I've had this conversation a lot, right? And one of the things that I kind of dive into in terms of just thinking about and just how it's happening, why it's starting to turn, is when you think about the kid, right? The high school kid being in lockdown, going through e-learning. I don't know what they do in the UK. Do the kids do e-learning? Do they stay at home and they do the classes from home, or are they going to school? What are they doing there?
They have just started back at school, but they have been doing like classes online, and there have been, like, say, primary schools, certain small classes have been allowed in certain bubbles. Yeah, over the last year.
Yeah, so it's the same thing here, right? Kids are starting to go back, but when you think of the kid, right? The kid that is staying at home, not being able to have fun and live life the way he wants to, that kid going into a pandemic who liked pop music, who liked hip hop, starting to get a little angry, starting to get a little angst in them. And I've said this so many times, rock and roll thrives on that. And I think that's what is really helping rock music is kids are looking for something different. They're looking for something that gives them an edge or feeds that edge that they're feeling, feeds that angst. And there's no better music that does it than rock and roll.
That's right. I think you're dead right. They've not been able to go out, and when you're like 13 or 14, you can't go and see bands anyway, and so they maybe look for these avenues primarily maybe on your Spotify's and your other streaming sites, and YouTube. I think, and they're retargeting and rethinking what's very much like punk in one respect, where there's always like a social commentary, which is which the listener just relates to.
Yeah, and I think with the ability to find music at your fingertips, right? And when you're sitting at home and you're not allowed to see your friends, or you are allowed to see your friends, but in a limited capacity, what are you going to do, right? You need that power chord that speaks to you, that kind of goes right through your soul, that makes you feel something that pop and hip hop and rap can't do. And, then you look at the bands and they've got this rebellious look, this outlaw look. And it's like, yeah, that's what I'm feeling right now. That's what I need right now. It kind of goes back to in the fall of 2020 with AC/DC releasing Power Up, and how that was a celebration for young and old generations alike who love that music. It was the perfect album to come along to feed into that, right? People needed to feel something good, and everybody connected with it. I know it was...
Yes, and something like familiar as well, like AC/DC. It's almost like, for want of a better word, it's like having a relative saying everything's going to be okay. Look, check, listen to this. We'll get you through it. An old familiar relative knocking on the door. It's Angus Young coming through the door.
yeah, right. Hey, we're here. We're here to help you through all this. We're to help you put a smile on your face. And I also think too, even though the passing of Eddie Van Halen was sad news, it did open the door for a lot of kids to hear his guitar work, to hear that music that has been missed for so many years, right? That feel good rock music that, a lot of rock music right now has a purpose. It has a meaning behind it. And that's great, right? And it has a commentary. But there was a time that it was just about having a good time. And, Van Halen was part of that. And when kids start to listen to that and they hear that up-tempo and they hear that wildness and they hear that wonder in their music, that also resonates with a kid too. So those two things really at the end of 2020 were really, kind of set the plateau, or set the resurgence in motion with what we're experiencing now. And now you have all these new bands coming out. You guys got a new, album coming out, new music coming out. And we're going to talk about that because I'm really excited about it. But it is starting to create a buzz. There is this, Greta Van Fleet just released an album last week. You've got the Dirty Honey album coming out, tomorrow. You've got, new music just coming out every week. That's just, wow, this is great. I mean, every band is hitting a home run, it seems, this year.
Yes, yeah, I concur. Like people have been starved of it. A lot of bands have been able to record, or were about to release a recording early last year, and a lot put that on hold to release when the time was right for them to be able to tour it. And there are other bands who, like ourselves, we were able to do some recording, quite a bit of recording actually in this last year. So yeah, it's all. I think it's very in such a. It's like there's so much. What started off so negatively, the outcome is very positive, and certainly for rock music, I think, and I believe.
Yeah. So what did you guys do? What has been life like for Neil and Takeaway Thieves during this time? I mean, when we last spoke, you guys were looking to go into the studio after the first of the year, I believe, and start recording music for a new album, and you were getting ready to prepare for that. Obviously, things have changed. So where did you guys go? What was 2020? What was the year like for you guys?
Well, what we actually started pre-production and recording some demos in the January and February, and we had one gig booked in the March the 7th, I believe it was, or 8th, and then they closed all the pubs, and they closed, the recording studio. We weren't allowed to go in that. So what we did, one of the first things we did was we kind of foresaw that we're going to go into a real lockdown here. So one of our the Waterloo Music Bar in Blackpool. This is where we rehearsed. It's where we did our first gig. It's where we recorded our Waterloo acoustic gig. It was an acoustic live album we did at the Waterloo Music Bar in Blackpool. And I've been throughout the UK, and this venue is like the number one 300 cap venue in the UK. I've been up and down the UK, and it's absolutely fantastic. And our concern was there's going to be troubled times ahead for this venue because the pub is now closed. And so what we did it was a Thursday night. We thought we'll do a live stream on Facebook, and we'll start a GoFundMe campaign. And let's see if we can raise some money for Ian, who owns the Waterloo, and the staff to let's see if we can help them, out with getting people to donate and get some money in for them, even pay the bills or some wages, staff wages. So on the Thursday night we did this. We did like a live set and to like 3 or 4 people in the pub because the pub was closed. It was primarily the staff. And we videoed it live on Facebook. It was watched by 15,000 people live. And the guy who was videoing it, he started writing down how many until it got to like 800. Then he just decided, it's gone up by the 1,000 now. He was holding up the figures. And the venue's only 300 caps, so we were joking, saying, "Oh my God, we've filled this venue out, tenfold almost." And we did like a full live set and an acoustic set, and we raised on the night £2,400. And in the end, after a couple of days later, the donations kept coming in, and we got it to over £3,000 for the venue. And I think in the end, it was like maybe 25,000 people caught the live stream. So the day after, on the Friday, was the national lockdown. So we were one of the first bands to play a live Facebook stream. And we were also one of the last bands to play in a venue in the UK, on the eve of the lockdown. So that then, from that, we did some other online sessions with a new wave of classic rock. We did a Breaking Bands festival, all online. Then in the summertime, we thought, we came up with an idea. We worked with a recording studio in New York called Lester Vall Studios in Brooklyn, New York. And what we did was we gave people the chance to choose one of 4 songs. And what we did was we personally recorded them acoustically for that person. And that was then sent over to Lester Vale Studios in New York, where they recorded it live onto a 1950s or 1920s recording lathe. And people were able to buy a copy of a master vinyl, 7-inch vinyl copy of whatever song they chose. So that's, just a totally, we were so excited. Again, something that we hadn't seen any other band do. A total unique opportunity to have, this one-off vinyl, which we actually, on the recording, we named whoever was buying it. So their name is actually on the recording. So we did that. Now, one of the songs, myself and Peter had just written called Find My Way Home. And so we're roughly written this song. And kind of stupidly, I put that as one of the choices for out of the 4 songs for people to choose. And as it happened, there was a few people chose this. So I actually messaged them and said, "Well, this is a brand new song. You've not heard this. What do you want this for?" And they said, "No, we want that one." So then we thought, right, we'll have to try and, let's get a real good recording of this. So we self-recorded it, and we went, we live just on the northwest. Well, we live in the northwest of England, and we live around an area just up north from Blackpool, and it's a lovely scenic part of the North England, around Morecambe Bay area, and there's some shipwrecks just down the estuary from where we live. And so we shot a video down there. We got a friend of ours to shoot a drone footage, and we climbed onto these old shipwrecks, and we did this video for this song, which we did because people were wanting to have a recording of it. So we released that, and that went down really well. And then we just did some more writing. And then we started back in the studio in October to record the album. That was with Dave Draper, who he's an award-winning producer. He's worked with the Wild Hearts primarily, Terror Vision. He's worked with Ryan Hamilton, and he very graciously said, come and work with me, I'll make you sound good. And he really did. We learned so much from him. Again, through the situation of last year, myself and Max went down, we laid the drums. Well, Max laid the drums, I just sat and watched. And then, a couple of weeks later, we went down, laid some guitars, and a couple of weeks later, laid the vocals. And so we did it step by step. And that's hopefully coming out over the next couple of months, really. That's where we're up to just now.
Yeah, I mean, it was a weird time, and a lot of bands, took that time to kind of escape from reality and go make some music. And I know you guys were already preparing to do that, but it almost had an added incentive to, sequester yourselves, in the studio and write music and record and do all that stuff, because, what's the alternative at that point? Watching the news, hearing about all the crazy stuff happening and, the lockdowns and the deaths and all that stuff. And, after a while, you got to get away from that. And, musicians and artists like yourselves, you have a unique ability to say, you know what, I'm going to go and just make some music. I'm going to just kind of not forget, I shouldn't say, but kind of just get out from what I need to get out from and go do that. Was that what it was like for you guys? I mean, did you guys feel that that was like your safe haven to make music during this time? Yes. Yeah.
There was no doubt. We just needed to look, we either, there's nothing, we've got no gigs. We had these online gigs, but it's not the same. There's no reaction. We did do one self isolated. Well, it was a smaller capacity, and people had to sit in groups. They weren't allowed to stand up. They weren't allowed to clap or sing. And so we did one of those gigs as well. But it's primarily we just look. This has always been our medicine for feeling good, rock and roll, and we just needed to get out and write and be as creative as we could with that time.
When you are writing this music and when you're preparing for it, and there's a lot of unknown when you guys are doing this, is that weighing on your minds of, hey, we don't even know when we're going to release this, we don't even know what we're going to do with it at this point because we don't know what's going to happen? Is that something that comes up with you guys during conversations, or is it just let's just focus on making good music and doing the best music for Takeaway Thieves, and then when we're done with it, we'll decide what we need to do?
Yes. We just said, look, let's one step at a time. We will be releasing it. We don't know when, but let's get this recorded. There's never been a better time, and the opportunity to work with Dave Draper, just presented itself, and we thought we can't. This is too good an opportunity to miss. So let's get on and get it done. Really, that's it.
You guys have, or You guys have really invested time in learning about blockchain technology, NFT, which I believe is really the wave of the future with how music is purchased and how bands go forth and create revenue for themselves. It's been long talked about. It's an ongoing conversation about how streaming services, anything, virtually anything, peanuts, pennies, basically, not even a penny, to the artists. And I think that blockchain and NFT, as we've talked about here on the show, is really a way for the artists to take back control and to really kind of give themselves more leverage in this industry and create more revenue for themselves. When you guys were deciding to go into this, what was the motivation? What was the rationale for Takeaway Thieves?
Primarily, we just agreed this is the future for music. What happened last year? I've always been in the music business, and it came to the point where I'm thinking, how am I going to make, how am I going to pay the bills? How am I going to live here? Because there's no work coming in, and I'd seen that. I was aware that the UK government, and I know the American government, were just printing more money to help people, just printing more money. And I saw the devaluation of money more so than ever. I'm thinking, well, I got some self-employment money, furlough from the government. And I gave Heidi, my partner, some the money to pay the bills, and I left £300. I thought, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try and learn cryptocurrency. So I took out £300. I invested it in a panic, and I didn't tell Heidi. And I waited a good, I thought if I can just get this to £1,000, then I'll tell her, that I've got this. I know what I'm doing. So that was last May the 9th. So it's coming up a year now, and my portfolio is absolutely. I'm up like 2,554%.
Wow.
And you don't get that in the bank. So that proved that I was right in believing that. Now from that, I also we bought a car with some of that as well. So it's that was the future. That is the future, and I feel money is just being destroyed, and any money in the bank now is like an iceberg. It's just melting away. And so I've helped a couple of other people. I helped my mum, said, look, Mum, take some savings out. I'll show you how to make some money. Now she goes to the bank manager and says, you don't give me any of these percents that my son gives me with crypto. So it's just people having to learn about this and be educated with regard to this. And from that, I started looking into NFTs in December last year. Just as we had done primarily most of the recording, we just had a couple of days left in the January of this year with regard vocals and backing vocals. And we had toyed on the idea, which we're still not telling anyone what the theme of the album is yet, but we came up with an idea then. Adam, the bassist in the band, came up with this idea, well, why don't we do this? And we were trying to work out at the time, what name should we go under? And I'm saying, well, the 9 is the universal number. Everything's sweet in 9. So you have a 3, 6, and 9. So look, all these great albums, Hotter Than Hell, Back in Black. I can't think of any others, but they're all 3-word titles. So let's find a 3-word title, because all the greatest albums have 3 words. And so we argued about that for a while, and then we just decided, look, let's just, if it's 3, 6, and 9, and 9's a universal number, why don't we just call it 9? And as it turned out, we recorded 9 songs, and it's taken 9 days to record the whole album in total over those months. And so from that, I said, look, guys, I'm into this crypto, and there's this thing called NFTs, non-fungible tokens. And I explained it to the to the guys what it was, and I said, this is got to be the future. Not only, and at that time I was thinking, how does this primarily affect streaming? Because not only everyone knows that bands are getting paid, 0.03 of a pence, well under a penny, and it's taken like 6 to 8 months to even get that little royalty from these streaming sites. But I kind of calculated that in the UK, people are paying subscription to Spotify, £10 a month, and it's coming to, they have to get their money worth. They're having to listen to like 94 hours of music a month. And I don't think the majority of people are doing that. Therefore, they're losing out. Not only the bands, it's the listeners or people who subscribe are missing out. Now, through this blockchain technology, I was thinking, right, there must be a way where, through the blockchain technology, where someone could start some kind of streaming service where instead of paying that subscription, just pay the band directly a penny for every time they listen to one of their songs. And in which case, the listener knows exactly how many pennies they've spent, and the songwriters, the musicians, in the band, they're getting that money straight away. They're not having to wait 6 or 8 months, and it's going straight to them. So it is the future for music. And, bands, they're still so early. It's getting that across into the mainstream, really. This is our predicament just now. I don't know any, if you will, proper rock bands who are doing this. And we announced it in the start of March, because I wanted to be one of the first to say, hey, we're doing this publicly, before we had done anything, because I knew there was a lot of work to be done in these NFTs. And we just think that this is a way forward. This is a way for all bands to have control and, be able to be resourceful and be able to actually make money and have an income. And from people who, maybe a lot of people buy 5 or 10 copies of an album to maybe help a band chart, or, just to try and support them in that way. Well, with NFTs, they can go one step closer to a more intimate relationship with that artist and songwriter by predominantly owning a part of whatever song they want. Either some I've seen some artists have done it for like 100%. Some do it for 10% or 5% or whatever. But then that person on that blockchain can prove that they actually own part of that song. So that's far better than I think than having like 10 copies of the same album. Where the listener is going to garner, the profits from the royalties and just the fact that, hey, I own one of my favorite songs. So it's a big step, and it's got to be the future of not just rock and roll, but of music in general, where it gives power back to the bands and the consumer, the listener.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about, how much money streaming platforms like Apple or Pandora or Spotify are making from streaming music and paying out very little, this has to make the music business very worried, because for years we've heard them cry poor. Oh, we don't have any money. That we don't have this, we don't have that, and yet they have reoccurring revenue, right? I mean, Spotify bills you $9.99 a month, and they've got millions of subscribers, and they also have advertisers. They're not hurting for money, but they're not paying out that much, to the musicians and the bands. And the other thing is too, I know Kings of Leon did when they released their album a month ago, I think in March, or it was either March or February. They did it through NFT, and
yes,
and they were the first band to do it. And although the expectations were not met, I should say, for the album, it was the first time. And of course, the first time out, there's going to be hurdles, there's going to be challenges. But if more bands get involved in this, and it becomes something that is really tangible and real, then, like you said, it takes control back. It really gives the artist, and especially for, independent bands like yourself, bands that are playing clubs, small theaters, stuff like that. The big boys don't have to worry, right? The big boys are going to make money regardless of what they're doing. But what happens when you have those streaming services is that the little guy, the bands that are starting out, the guys that are hustling and trying to make a buck through their music, it's difficult. It's really hard. I mean, you have to almost tour constantly to make any money. And you mentioned something very important about money kind of not being worth what it really is, and that's true. But also, people don't put worth into music anymore. They don't. Music has become, in large part, background music, and it's become something that you just pull from the sky. You point, click, download. There's no physical connection to it. There's no, there's like when we were younger, we would buy the albums, we would sit with the album, we would look at the album cover, the artwork, all that stuff. That doesn't happen, and it's almost like people don't respect the art form and what it takes to create music and why there is value to that. And when you mention about how someone can have an intimate piece of a song and have an intimate relationship in that way with the band, that almost brings back that connection that was lost that we had with the physical copy, right?
Yes, certainly. Yeah, 100%.
It's interesting, man. I agree with you. I mean, we're at the the beginning stages of this. This is something that people are starting to talk more about. And when you read more about cryptocurrency, when you read about blockchain and NFT, it's almost like daily you're turning around and there's another article about it. There's another industry that's getting more involved in it. And it's exciting. It really is, especially for music, because the value of music for me, because I'm a music fan, I put a high value on it, and artists and bands should be paid accordingly for that. I really get upset and pissed off when I see people use their platform to say, oh, these guys, they're driving around their sports cars and their mansions, and they don't, that's such a crappy way to look at things. Right? Because before they got that Ferrari, and before they got that Porsche, and before they lived in that mansion, they lived in cockroach-infested apartments. They lived basically starving themselves and working at it day in and day out to get to that point. And they've given joy to millions of people, thousands of people, whatever the fan base is. They should reap the benefits for that. There is a value. Don't devalue the music, and when people do that, they're devaluing it.
I agree. And also that's a time when record companies, had that money to be able to invest in a band where they didn't get dropped after the first album. They were able to grow as artists, and the record company would keep that. Whereas now it's such a flip. Oh well, that's not working. Off you go. And this is just a way forward for bands to bring back the value of their art and their craftsmanship in songwriting and playing music. One thing you could do, it could come to this where whereas everyone's always saying, oh, we want to sell as many CDs and vinyls as we can, and that is great. But if you could, in a way, increase your value by saying, we're only going to do 100 copies of this. And it's far easier for a big established band to certainly get into the NFTs because they've got those followers. They've already got those designated, super fans and that strong following where there's enough of those people to be able to make these NFTs a success. Whereas just now, right at the start, this is what we're just thinking. Right, okay, how best can we, for want of a better word, educate people to say, look, this is the future. this is, if you dig us and you want to, you want to support us, this is a way where we can give you something great, just like we did last year when we did these 7-inch, vinyl masters. That was something that people actually cherished, and this is just the next step from that, where they're actually owning part of the song, and it's what value you put on that, and do you maybe just only sell 100 copies, and so that brings greater value to those 100 copies, and let everyone else listen to it for free on on Spotify or all the streaming sites. But you've created that valuable, as well as like that digital asset of the NFT. You've given them maybe some kind of physical copy that's very limited. That's so we're kind of pondering all these equations of how we can. I'm going to have to do some like videos and help people, because certainly I think every band is going to be into this. They're going to be if they're serious and they have value in what they do, they're going to do that. Throughout the whole of this lockdown, Takeaway Thieves, we like I said, we did quite a few online gigs, but we never ever asked anyone for any money, and a lot of bands did, and if that's what they did, that's cool. But we're not that type of band. We don't take any money from the band ourselves. We just put that straight into recording and getting from A to B at each gig, and buying merch to sell. Everything just goes back in to the band presently, and we're not one of we're not into like begging or saying, hey, can you put some money in the tip jar for us to perform for you, like a dancing, singing monkey. We're not going to do any of that. And we found a way where we could go, right, this is not only the future of music for the listener and for the bands, it also gives you great leverage with regard any, the record industry is having to totally rethink, and it has to get on board with all these NFTs. But bands can then have a leverage against record companies. So whereas before they'd get maybe a pittance, if that, with regard to offering up an album to a record label, how we see it is we can go, right, okay, do you want to buy a percent of one of our songs? And if you do, this is the cost it's going to be. And, so we could have, like, say, for example, those 9 songs on our debut album coming up. We could sell all those 9 songs to 9 different record companies if they chose to, believe in that song and promote that song and wanted to own that song, as well as, like, your normal fan. So that gives great leverage as well. So it's a win-win for bands, we believe. I say we believe because I've just said to the guys, look, this is, shall we have a go at this? It's brand new. It's going to be hard because we're right at the start. It's a debut album. We have quite a good, fan base already for such a new band. But it's going to be hard trying to get those people over. But what we are seeing actually, since we've announced this, is there's been a rise in people following us from the NFT cryptocurrency world, because it's something they're more knowledgeable about than your ordinary Joe on the street. And I certainly think by the end of the year, there's all these complications with regard to, you have to set up like a digital wallet on your PC or your tablet or on your phone, and then you have to go in and put your money into that to then convert that to some kind of cryptocurrency before you actually go on the exchange to go, I want 10% of this song or 20% of that. So I think, certainly by next year, everyone will have a digital wallet on their, in their browsers, and it'll be just far more accessible. And I believe that every band will be behind this because it's the only way forward. It's the savior of music, I think.
It is interesting because I think a lot of people are watching to see how this impacts music, and I have to think that it's making a lot of people nervous in certain places, because if this does do what everybody thinks it's going to, and there's no reason to think that it won't, it's going to be a game changer. It really is. And, I think more bands are looking into this. I think more bands want to have more control. And also, too, it matters with publishing, too, right? I mean, publishers are going to be very nervous about this, because songs won't be registered to a publishing company anymore, and they're going to miss out on revenue too as well. So it's going to create a lot of waves in music.
Oh yeah, most certainly. I mean, they're going to have to be on board, and there are a couple of record companies I am aware that they've looked into that, and record companies can still, and publishers can still financially gain from that because of the ownership of the songs they have now. I mean, last year there's I can't remember the company, but there's a big investment company that are basically just buying up just the normal publishing rights from big stars with big songwriters with like 30, 40-year careers. I think Bob Dylan was one of them. And Shakira, where they sold all their publishing rights for a big lump sum, like 150 million or something. But that you think, well, why are they giving away all that? Prince years ago he fought for his own, to keep all his own rights. But that is a way where if someone's in their 60s or 70s, how many years have they got left? So how are they going to garner that money from touring, in the latter stages of their career, shall I say, whereas they can get one big lump sum from the publishers, which is more than they would get probably for the rest of their life, in one sweep. So that just translates again with the NFT situation, where record labels, they can offer NFTs, but again, your artist is going to suffer then, because obviously the record company will take that money, same as publishers. But then also it opens up for publishers and record labels the fact that they can go, well, that band they've got one decent song, so let us invest and buy that. So that it works for them as well if they open their eyes and see it like that, because that's how it has to be. Like they could, and a lot of bands probably do get signed because they have maybe one or two songs where the record label and the publishers are thinking, well, that's the song that's going to make us money, so we'll sign these up for a 3-album deal or whatever on the premise of that one song. Whereas now, to say that these labels and publishers can just buy that one song, for a percentage, and work with that one song with the band. So it's workable for them. It's just I think that the majority are aware that this is coming. It's very much like this whole blockchain technology. It's not just going to. It's already proved within the art world. I paint like portraits and not walls. Like little paintings and big paintings, portraits, landscapes. And so I've seen it in the art world how it's just exploded, and people have wow, look, I've got the only copy of this in the world as a digital asset, and so it's happening with music. The whole blockchain is a big threat to the financial world, financial system, and the World Bank, because it's based in the cryptocurrency world. It's going to affect solicitors and estate agents, because in the through the blockchain, if I have a house and you want to buy my house with me, Jay, I have a block that says I own the house and I have providence in that, and you want to buy the house, you set up another block where you've sold the house to me, you give me the money straight away, and that's created another block in this chain which says that you own the house, you bought off me, and you bought it for this much. So it's a whole new way for the whole world to be a better place and freer from these big establishments, either we can say in the record industry or in the these behemoths in the world banking, where your ordinary Joe is going to be free and more in control of their life, unless an asteroid comes and knocks out, electricity. that's the only downside I see of it.
Well, yeah, let's keep our fingers crossed, on that. It's an interesting topic, and like I said, we did an episode about it last month, and we only scratched the surface on it. And like I said, I believe it's a game changer. I really do. I think it's really, and the benefit is 100% for the artist. I mean, there's really not a lot of downside. I don't think there's any downside for artists and bands to really put some time in learning about this and also pursuing this stuff, because, it really is giving you control. And it really does help the artist gain momentum in terms of revenue and in terms of creating more music, because the more successful the band is, the more music they can make, right? And that's the whole key. As we end here, we go into, to continue on in 2021. We did talk about how, you recorded the album. You did talk about the idea of the number 9 and all the things that went along with that. As far as the music goes, and the EP that you guys did, one of my favorite EPs in the last few years. It's a phenomenal release. I love it. And, for those that are not familiar with Takeaway Thieves and that did not hear the last interview with Neil in fall of 2019, they're very reminiscent of, the sleaze rock of back in the day, of like the LA Guns and the Faster Pussycats and the Guns N' Roses and that type of style of music, dirty rock and roll, which I love, absolutely love. As far as the music goes, where did you guys go in terms of the direction of the music on this album?
We all we can do is come up with ideas, and if we're all on board with, hey, this is sounding good, that riff sounding good, or that drum fill, let's see what we can do with this, or that lyric. So it's basically just the same, because that's what we like. That's what we want to hear. We want to. I've said this before many times. We're all in a band that we're proud to be in, and we would want to see live, because we do a great live show. I know loads of bands say that, but I believe in the feedback we get, because people keep coming to see us. We're the hosts of the party. We want to make sure the guests are enjoying themselves. So with regard to music, it's just really the same. But what's even special about this album is we wrote a couple. I think there's 3 we wrote where we hadn't really even played them properly as a band, and we took a lot individually. All of our performances were enhanced with Dave at the helm saying, well, let's try this. Instead of playing it like that, play it like this. Instead of singing it like that, sing it like this. Play this bass fill, try that bass, style. So Dave, we can't talk enough about Dave. Dave's like our George Martin, I guess, for want of a better word. I know when he listens to this, he'll be embarrassed by that. But he really has made us think more. We brought these songs and he said, well, why don't we put that in there instead, or take this out? And he's really helped us develop and hear things slightly different, because it is hard when when you're on stage and you've got people jumping about in front of you, and you're caught in that moment of euphoria, and you're just having a great time. You're not really listening to those songs. And even when we practice them in the practice room, we are kind of listening, but not with a fine tooth comb like you do when you're in the studio. And so Dave really brought that to our attention and said, look, let's, he just made it so much better. His production skills fantastic, and his vision and his understanding of music has just made this, what we think is, well, it's certainly the best album we could make. And it's just basically the stuff that we would love to hear being played by a band we would love to see. So, with the added bonus of Dave doing a fantastic mix and mastering job. Having said that, we've not heard it all. We're waiting on it coming back. Should be a couple of weeks before it's all mastered and finished. But the little bits we've heard, and how much joy and fun we had in the studio. Dave said he's never had such a good time in the studio. And we all just had a blast in the studio. And we all just went such great fun. And in those sterile studio conditions, you're not really supposed to have. Well, you are, but you're not supposed to have as much fun as certainly we did. And I just feel there's the people who dig us now, without listening to it, I think they're going to be proud of what we've been able to do.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I am just, waiting to hear of it. I'm anticipating. I was, obviously I was hoping for something last year that didn't happen. And, when I got the message, a couple weeks ago that you guys are pretty close to finishing this. Yeah, I can't wait, because I love your music. I love what you guys are about. It definitely is. There's a lot of bands out there that are great. Don't get me wrong. They're in their they have their own style, but I've always loved this style of music, because it to me, it defines what rock and roll is, all the way back to the Stones, the original sleaze rock band, the Rolling Stones, all the way to the bands I mentioned before. So, it's definitely something that is on my list to get once it's released.
I mean, someone said, "Well, what's this? What are you thinking this album is going to be like?" And my kind of analogy was, and again, this is without even listening to the album, but from what I have heard in the studio, and I know every band says, "Hey, this is the best album we've ever written," but if it wasn't, if these weren't the best songs we could write, and if these weren't the best songs, that we love, they wouldn't be on this album. And mind you, I guess every band says that. But my analogy I used was, if there's a lot of, you imagine a crossroads, and you're in the middle of this crossroads, and there's a band playing there, and they're all right, and they're not getting your pulse going. They're not. You might be tapping one toe. And they're dressed in black T-shirts, and they're stood still, and they're looking down at their shoes, and they're playing rock and roll, and you think, well, this is the normal now. And then in the distance, you see there's a couple of headlights in all 4 points of the crossroads, and there's a bit of smoke, and these lights are getting bigger and bigger as they come towards you, and then bang, you're flat on your ass. These trucks have gone, and you stand up and say, "What is that?" Well, that is Takeaway Thieves' 9 album. I don't know whether the other guys agree with me saying that, but that's how I see this album going. It's I'd say people who dig us and like us, I'm sure they will be proud of what we've been able to achieve, and they'll be proud to say, "Hey, look, listen to this band. I like these on the EP. Now listen to them." And I think there's such a, I feel with the NFTs, how they're going, and we're going to get so many new people digging this, and being into it. That it's just a very plus thing for us, I think.
It sounds like you guys took 2020 to not only just make music, right, and really create something special, but also put the band in place for success, or put them in a position, put Takeaway Thieves in a position to be successful. with all what you guys did, and research the blockchain and the NFT, make the music, now you're preparing to release it, and there's preparation in that. It really does sound like, hey, let's use this time to our advantage. Is that a correct statement?
Yes, and I think it's kind of been a blessing to have had this time because of the it's so early in the NFT world for it all, but primarily in our sense for music, in the fact that we're really having to work out how best, what value do we put on each song, to what as fans of music, what would we want with each package, and we believe the product is strong enough, and it's just it's a learning curve for us to be able to make it as easy for people to be able to get this if they choose to have it as an NFT kind of way, and so we're not following any. Unfortunately, there's no template where we can go, well, okay, we could say, well, this is how Kings of Leon did it, but they're a total different league. And so I know there are a few bands who are just waiting and seeing how we do it, and they'll hopefully they'll learn from our mistakes and our winning ways, if you will, of how to best do this, with it being such an early release for even a proper rock band. There's been a lot of EDM musicians have released this, but they're more linked in with the NFT, the crypto world, whereas your rock musicians and rock music isn't really. So we're kind of setting. I don't know if we're setting the bar. That's not the right word. We're creating a template that hopefully other bands can learn, use, and adapt for themselves to go forward with NFTs and to secure, control over their songs and their craft and share that with their fans.
It definitely is exciting, and I do think you're right. You are one of the first bands that I know of outside. Kings of Leon. Let's face it. They're a big kid on the block, but a band like Takeaway Thieves. This is really going to be interesting to see what happens, and it's exciting.
We kind of had to laugh because we amongst ourselves, because we were thinking. It's bizarre how synchronicity works out. And in the December when we had myself, Peter, Ben, and Adam. We were putting the guitars down, and we the studio was down in Worcestershire, and we had got an Airbnb, lovely cottage in the countryside, and it's a lovely scenic part of the UK, even in December. And we were. When we came up with this one idea of, and I know it sounds vague, but we've not really said what that brainstorming session concluded with. But we thought, God, this is we've got to have big balls to be able to do this, and then to like a month and a half later for me to say, guys, I've been watching this NFT, and it's we could be one of the first here to do this because it's just taken off in the art world, and how, the synchronicity of what this other thing we were doing in December to say, basically people would say, who the hell do they think these guys are? By doing what we are going to do. And then to add on top, this Takeaway Thieves, they're doing this and they're doing this NFT thing as well. Wow. Who do they think they are? But someone's got to be one of the first, haven't they? And like we said, what have we got to lose? we have nothing to lose apart from the time it's taken to create a unique package for a debut album, and we're just so excited about what's going to hold. And the worst thing that can happen is no one buys anything. So we still haven't lost anything, but we tried. And we tried really hard. The other thing we've lost is the time it's taken to to work all of it out. But I'm sure like I said, there's quite a few people in the crypto world who are following us now, which I find very interesting. They don't see it as as like they might not even care about the music, but they see it as an investment, because with the NFTs, what people can do primarily is they can then sell that song on when they've had enough of it for greater profit. But what we can put in place is a commission rate, so we can, if that person sells, if you buy one of our songs, and I'm not making you by suggesting that, I'm just using you as an example, Jay. Now, if you were to buy that song and you go, okay, I'm going to sell it on and I'm going to make some profit from that. Well, when you sell that song on, we get 10% commission. So each time that song is then sold on, we still get 10% commission through the blockchain. So it's like, say, Leonardo da Vinci, if this was going, hundreds of years ago, this NFTs, his ancestral family would still be able to claim the millions of pounds his paintings are worth, rather than him dying, poverty-stricken because of the blockchain. So that's another plus, and I think it's very it'll be very interesting to see. I'm sure we have some fans who will go, I want to buy this. I know it's quite hard for the mainstream to get their head round, just at this moment, presently, how they buy it, if they're, unknown, certainly if they don't know anything with regard to the crypto world. But so I'm sure a few fans will gravitate towards this, because it is such a unique, one-off, special thing. But also, I think it'd be interesting to see how many people, after all these extra followers we're getting through the crypto NFT world, how many are just investors who are going to be buying it, to sell on at a later date. So it's a very exciting time. We think we just can't wait, for it to be out and done.
When will the album be out?
We still, and I'm not just saying this, we still don't really know. I mean, we were thinking in September. We were going to bring it earlier. There has been a delay in getting the final masters, because Dave is very busy. He's just recorded the new Wild Hearts album, and he was involved in the live streaming that they did just at the weekend there. So he was mixing and mastering the live streaming as well. So with us being a little band, we got sidestepped while he continued with finishing off the Wild Hearts album. So we're expecting the masters back imminently. We're going to do a pre-sale. We're still looking at the middle to the end of May to start the pre-sale with the NFTs and all your normal, pre-sale packages. We should have. I know it sounds bizarre because we've not even heard the album. Our idea is we get the album. As soon as we get it, we're all going to listen to it together for the first time. We will then choose what single. On that same day, we're doing a photo shoot for the album. The week after, we will shoot the video for the first single. And we're hoping that will be out in the middle of the pre-sale. So we're looking at maybe the end of May, early June for the first single to be out, which, again, we don't know what the song is because we've not heard any of them, completely all the way through. So yeah, that's that's the kind of plan with having nothing at the moment. That's the kind of timeline we're looking at. But then, we think, well, why do we have to wait till September? But we want to give the pre-sale enough time for people to, and also we need these few weeks as well as preparing for the photo shoot and all the artwork. We don't want to say, we would love to say, hey, let's have the album out in 1 month after we've got it. But these things, and especially with the last year and time delays with manufacturing of CDs, and we're also looking into vinyls. The manufacturing time of them has been increased as well. So the last thing we want is for people to go, well, I ordered this album and it's come out, but I've not got my product yet, because it's still being made. So as much as we would like it out as soon as we can, we're having to await these manufacturing times. So it's looking like it could be September, I think, unless we can get these manufacturing times quicker to us. But certainly, I would imagine we have a single out by the start of June.
Well, that's exciting.
So it's exciting. We've got like just about 6 weeks to do a photo shoot, sort the artwork out for the album, which most of it's already done, and sort out a video, listen to the album. Well, obviously pick a song, do the video, get that video completed, as well as I don't know, maybe doing some video educational video on if people wish to buy an NFT, they can source some videos that we'll do or present that helps them understand this NFT business.
It's exciting. I am charged up for it, so I can't wait for new Takeaway Thieves, and I do hope you guys are immensely, incredibly successful with this, because even if there's some hurdles and some challenges, my advice to you guys is don't give up, because there's going to be some kinks, there's going to be some challenges, but I really do think that this is where the future's at, and I do think it's going to be a game changer.
Oh, we all totally agree with you. I've talked to other guys, or brainwashed other guys into believing this as well. And I've said, look, I'm kind of blessed where I come up with these crazy ideas. I go, hey, why don't we? And they're like, what the hell are you talking about? And then they maybe go away and they think about it and they go, oh, okay, let's try it. And I'm very humbled that they kind of come on this journey of, if you will, these crazy wild ideas of, hey, let's do this, let's do that. And, okay, let's see what happens. Primarily we just want how we started the band. We just wanted a good time with friends and be in a band with friends and have a good time playing music we would love to hear, and be in a band we would love to see. And it's as simple as that. That is kind of evolved into other people, like the Takeaway Thieves, not just us. So it's kind of like very selfishly, we were doing it just primarily for ourselves. And hey, let's see if we can do. Oh, let's do that. That looks a good gig. Let's do this. That's a good gig. And it's just kind of grown. And again, we're all very humbled at these. I've said this a few times. Fans, we really don't. We can't get our head around that. If that makes sense. I feel that's quite derogatory. They're our friends. They've all become friends. And we did the social distancing gig, and this lady did a review of it. And there's I may even get it on a T-shirt. It's such a. I just love this saying. She said, "Takeaway Thieves have not just have a fuck you attitude, but it's a polite fuck you. They ask if you want to be fucked." So
that's important. That is important.
Because all we want to do, we just want a good time, and the amount of come off stage and they're like, wow, there's people smiling back at us, and when we come off, they're saying, God, you guys, people have got used. I said this to you last time. People have just got used to bands being all too cool and talk. Certainly, there's a few bands in the UK who talk with an American accent. I don't know if in America they talk with an English accent, but I think it's just cool to go, "Hey man, how's it going, guys?" When they're I don't know, when they're from Yorkshire or some other, when they're not from America. Much like I think Ozzy Osbourne does, doesn't he, when he's on stage? And we are just humble and down to earth. We just want a good time and a good laugh, and we want the people to enjoy themselves. Basically, we're enjoying ourselves, and people just, especially after this last year, people just want a good time, and we are certainly the band to bring a good time, and for people to forget that the last year and any worries they have during the week, or just come to see us and listen to us, and let's all just have a good time and forget whatever problems are in the world or are in your home.
Well, Neil, we'll end on that note. Thank you very much for coming back on the Hook Rocks podcast. I appreciate the visit. I appreciate the conversation.
Thank you very much for having me, Jay, again, and thank you very much for all your support.
We will definitely have you on when the album comes out. So we'll look to another visit from you in the fall.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
All right, everybody. That is Neil from Takeaway Thieves. I'm Jay Scott. This is the Hook Rocks, the Ultimate Rock Community Podcast. Stay safe, stay healthy. Subscribe to wherever you're listening. Hit the follow button, hit the subscription button, whatever you need to do. Take care, stay strong, stay healthy, and we'll talk again soon. Thanks.
You're ripping hearts apart.